Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the hose.
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. I'm Tom Anderson. Beautiful day here from the Hoboken Studios in New Jersey. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I've got a great guest today. Dan Hellie is a sports anchor for the NFL Network. You see him on UFC's Contender Series. He does broadcasting for the Tennessee Titans. He's called a number of football games on Fox. Really pumped to have him on today. Let me bring him in here. Dan Hellie, welcome to Terrific Talk.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me, bro.
So I like hearing broadcasters' stories on this podcast because it's the kind of career you don't really just jump into randomly. Most people who get into this business have a passion for it. And I believe yours started in the 7th grade. What happened there?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. You know, my parents were pretty strict when I was growing up, so they didn't allow me to watch television during the week, which I thought was crazy back then. Now that I have my own kids, I wish I had implemented that rule early on. So I watched all the local news. That was the only thing we were allowed to watch. And, I liked the news just fine, but I really liked the sports. So in Washington, D.C., we had George Michael, not that George Michael, the other George Michael. This guy Glenn Brenner and Frank Herzog, who at the time was the voice of the Redskins. They were the big 3 local sportscasters. So I knew exactly what time they would hit. There was a little gap in between one sportscast and the other sportscast, so I'd watch all 3 of them. And in 7th grade, we had to spend the day with somebody. We could reach out to anybody we wanted. And half the people went to work with their folks. And I called all 3 of the sportscasters. And the one guy who got back to me, or had a producer get back to me, was Glenn Brenner. And I went in and spent the day with him and his producers and helped them pick out highlights for that night's sportscast. At the time, they would have the highlights sent to them every day. So we would scroll through the tapes, pick out a couple of highlights. I watched Glenn present it on the 6 o'clock news, and then after the news, he was getting ready for his Redskins show, and at that time, the Redskins were great. And I believe it was Charles Mant who came in, who was a guest on the show, who was a big hero of mine. So after that day and experiencing what it was like to put the show together, being there with Glenn, seeing Charles Mant come in, I was that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a local sportscaster in Washington, D.C., from that moment on.
I've read that, you've moved around a decent amount in your career. Florida, South Carolina, Minnesota, Washington, D.C., now L.A. And I also know that you married your high school sweetheart, which I did too, by the way, so we have that in common.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Was all that moving and picking up and changing schedules difficult for you guys to get through? How did you make that work?
Well, most of the moving was, 2 of those moves were before I was married, and then 3 of those moves were after I was married. And really, the hardest part about moving is when you have kids. And I have an 11 and 12-year-old boy and a girl now, and we've only had to move them once for the most part. My daughter was 8 weeks old when we moved from Orlando to Washington, D.C. So basically the only move that she remembers is the move from Bethesda, Maryland, which is where we live right outside D.C., to Manhattan Beach. And same goes for my son. So, now it's changed a lot since I came up, because you had to go the local route to get the experience for the most part. I graduated from University of Tennessee in 97. So, basically came up late 90s, early 2000s in TV. It's different now in that, take LA, for instance. Say you go to USC or UCLA and you're a broadcasting or journalism student there. You could graduate and work for Spectrum Sportsnet, which is the equivalent of, say, the Yes Network where you are.
Yeah.
You could do online stuff for them. You could go down and write for the Orange County Register. There are a lot more opportunities now, whether it's digital or regional sports networks, than there were when I came up. So you don't have to go to Fairbanks, Alaska, or Alexandria, Minnesota, like I did to get that first job. So I think it's a little different.
All right, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Want to know an easy way to save some money? Lower the interest rate on your credit card debt with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. Lightstream rewards consumers who have good credit with a great interest rate and no fees. Get a credit card consolidation loan from 5.89% APR with AutoPay. Loans from $5,000 to $100,000. Choose your funding date. As soon as today. Listeners to this podcast get an additional interest rate discount on top of Lightstream's already low rates. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/terrific. That's lightstream.com/terrific. Subject to credit approval. Rate includes 0.5% autopay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com for more information.
Yeah, you talk about the whole media landscape changing. You know, we've got internet, podcasts. That route is just different now. Long term, for someone who wants to work in broadcasting, where should they be putting their energy? What kind of goals should they be looking at?
Well, the number one thing I always say to all young prospective broadcasters is learn how to write. Become a good writer. Because you look at the guys who have that crossover appeal now. Look at the first wave was Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. They were both columnists for the Washington Post, very talented writers. And George Michael, who was the one who hired me in Washington, D.C., is the one who first put them on the air on a local sports show in D.C., and people saw, wow, these two dudes really have chemistry. They're not just writers, they're personalities. And they moved over to ESPN. They started Pardon the Interruption 15 years ago, and it's been the most successful show on ESPN almost since day one. So learn how to write. I feel like the transition is easier to make to television than just being a television person trying to go into the writing field. And when you are a writer, you can also be the expert. You can be the host. You can be the analyst. You can be a little bit of everything. So to me, if I had to do it all over again, I never wrote for my school newspaper in college or in high school. I would have done that. I would have become a better writer. And the other thing this is what I did that helped me along the way was just internships. Just get as many as you can, everywhere you can. I did some at local TV stations in D.C. I did as many as I could in Knoxville when I was in school. I was running the instant replay on the big board during Lady Vols basketball games. I was interning at a local radio station. I interned at the local television station, which actually led to my very first job as a news photographer at WATE in Knoxville. And I took that because I knew wherever I went, eventually to get an on-air job, I would have to shoot and edit my own stuff. We called that one-man banding way back in the day. And it's actually almost come full circle. When I was in Washington, D.C., we had a lot of people who would, younger journalists who were hired, who would carry around their own little cameras, and in a sense, they were the one-man bands. They would shoot the story, they would go back, they would edit, and then they would present it on TV.
The Terrific Talk podcast is also brought to you by AIG Travel Guard. Any of you have summer travel plans? I'm looking to go to Boston, Fenway Park to see a Red Sox game. I've never been. I can't wait. Super excited, but what if something goes wrong? For times when trips don't go as planned, there's AIG Travel Guard. Travel Guard staff is available 24/7 to help. And Travel Guard plans work anywhere in the world. Their coverage includes flight and hotel rebooking, flight cancellation, interruption or delay, lost or delayed baggage, medical expenses and evacuation, passport or ticket replacement assistance. If something goes wrong on your trip, Travel Guard is there to help you. And you can get coverage right now for just $30 by texting TERRIFIC to 484848. That's TERRIFIC to 484848. Terrific to 484848. Message and data rates may apply. Please do not text and drive. Insurance offered by Travel Guard Inc. and underwritten by National Union Fire Insurance Company of Pittsburgh, PA. For a complete description of the coverage, limitations, and exclusions, go to travelguard.com. This ad does not necessarily describe actual events and is used for illustrative purposes only. You're very versatile. You've been able to wear a lot of hats. Sports director, reporter, anchor, play-by-play announcer. Do you have a favorite? What do you like to do most?
All I've ever really known is the anchoring and hosting side of it. And a few years ago, I started dabbling in play-by-play because I just felt like the long-term play for me would be on the play-by-play side. You can do it longer. For the most part, most studio hosts aren't doing it into their, So I'm just thinking down the road, and I missed the energy of being in a live where there were fans. And it's very different, the studio feel, to calling the game as it happened. I was lucky enough to be able to call a couple of games for Fox. I've done some college basketball games out here in LA on Spectrum Sportsnet. I'm going into my third year calling the preseason games for the Tennessee Titans, which has been a really fun ride. They've been an organization that's certainly on the rise, made the playoffs last year, and have a new coach, Mike Vrabel, who I'm looking forward to sitting down and chatting with here pretty soon.
Quick break to talk about Hims, a new wellness brand for men. Did you know that 66% of men lose their hair by the age of 35? I'm one of them. Thing is, when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. Thanks to science, baldness can be optional. Hims connects you with real doctors, medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss. There's no waiting room, no awkward doctor's visits. You save hours by going to 4hims.com. It's so easy. You answer a few quick questions. The doctor will review and can prescribe you. Products are then shipped directly to your door. I went to the site, checked it out. Super easy. And if you order now, my listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. Go to 4hims.com/terrific. That's 4hims.com/terrific. 4hims.com/terrific. You mentioned live television. Things can go wrong when you're on live television. Do you have any good examples of something just going badly wrong and you've been able to kind of save the situation?
Yeah, there's two that come to mind. One is my very first job in Alexandria, Minnesota. We would literally drive 3 hours one way to shoot a story on a little farm in a town called Bemidji, and then we would drive 3 hours back.
Oh my God.
We would put the story together, and then we would go sit on the desk and front the story. Well, when you're sitting on the desk, we had, I don't know if you remember those old a mouse for a computer, a keyboard that would use, that had like a track, a roller ball on it.
Yeah.
So I was using that, walked the air, and the cord was kind of between my legs, and we go on camera where I have both hands between my legs, yanking this cord to try to get it out of place, and I look up in the camera, I'm like, oh my God, this is a weird scene. I'm a deer in headlights for like 10 seconds, and then I just kind of roll into whatever I'm talking about at the time. So that was strange. That was my first job in Alexandria, Minnesota. Not many people are watching, so you can make as many mistakes as you need to, which is the great thing about places like Alexandria. And then more recently, a couple of years ago at NFL Network, I'm doing a segment with Charlie Casserly, a former general manager of the Redskins and the Titans, who I really enjoy working with. And he had been bouncing around to several different shows and studios that during the course of the day, and a lot of his segments were on tape. When he came to our show, our segment happened to be live. And we had talked about earlier in the day in a production meeting about the topics and how I would set them up and the particular question I was going to ask him. And I reworded the question a little bit, and I think threw him a little bit of a curveball that he wasn't expecting. So he said, all right, let's stop down. You didn't tell me you're going to ask the question that way, Dan. We can't do it like that. We got to do it all over again. And I'm like, all right, Charlie, well, let me put it this way. And he's like, no, that's not the way we're going to do it.
Oh my God.
And I go, he goes, let's do it over. I go, well, Charlie, we're live. So let me just do it this way. And he goes, we're live? All right, well, let's do it. And so he rolled right through it like a pro. But I was just so concerned about keeping the whole thing on the rails,
right?
Since the whole thing was live. And that's available on YouTube somewhere. And Charlie and I both laugh about it now. But that was one of those. That was definitely one of those moments where you're like, uh-oh, this could be trouble. But luckily, we kept it out of the deep end for the most part.
That's awesome. Dan, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on today. Everybody go check out Dan on Twitter. His handle is @DanHellie, Hellie. Dan, thank you so much. You were great.
Hey, Tom, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time.